trying to look like Joe Rogan.
But I was looking at your stuff. You'd be like the perfect guest on that show. They've had. Wish I had some kind of poll. I could make that happen.
I know Joe. It's just very difficult to get on his show just because he's so booked up.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
Yeah, but
so you've met with him? You've talked to him before?
Yeah, I've talked to him. I think, well, obviously we run into each other or have ran into each other. I think I ran into him in Vegas at the MMA awards at one point. And then mutual friends, obviously. And Dean Thomas is who's like a mentor of mine, one of my coaches. He's been on the show, but he knows Joe really well. And just a bunch of guys, obviously a lot of my fighters. So that would be awesome if I could get on there, it would be fun. Eventually, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. Eventually. Right. Someday he'll have a moment. Maybe then he moved to Texas. He'll have less locals on the show.
Yeah.
And then have time for other people. No, because that's what I was going to say. The information that you share on your social, I guess we're starting, or just let's get into it. Right. Yeah. That's how he does it. But yeah, the information that you share on your social media is amazing. I mean, I was on your YouTube, like doing research, and you have a ton of stuff. You have so much, and it's like you can just flow with all the stuff, And I'm a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, and a strength conditioning coach, but this is just the base level stuff. And I was going to ask you about your education, but it feels like it goes well beyond that. Like I think that when you graduated undergrad from with these 2 degrees that you have, I believe one's a master's, like that was.
I just got a bachelor's. Yeah.
Okay. You should just went with it.
Well, what happened was I was actually going for my master's. I was going for my PhD. And then I was fighting professionally still at the same time. And I ended up getting a bad concussion. And just, you got to think, I've been playing football since I was 7 years old. So my first concussion, I was probably 7, 8 years old. And then throughout the years, going all the way up playing college football, it really, really took a toll on me. So I had like 8 or 9 concussions that you can count. I guess I probably have more than that. But those are the ones I can remember. And then as I was to get my degree, the issue that happened was I got hit in the back of my head, and it was a concussion, but it was different. It was like I could not get over the symptoms, and it was bad for a good week and a half. So I went to a neurologist, and they found out that I had what's called beta amyloid plaques that's inside the neurons. It sits inside and basically eats away the neuron. And if I were to keep accumulating head trauma, this can get worse. And I have, Alzheimer's or something along the lines of that, later on down the line. So I was like, oh, well, okay, because that makes sense. Pretty much because at the end of the day, I remember sitting in one of my classes and just not comprehending like I usually do with what the professor was saying. And now I'm better, but I think obviously with the concussions and so on and so forth, and then my business growing, and then me being a pro athlete, it was just not enough time in the day. And so I made a decision to obviously stop, fighting and going into, my business full go. And that's when I really started to just learn outside of the academia world and really started to research as much as I possibly could, and then network with really, really intelligent people. And the great thing is that I have a huge community of academia that I can go to, right? I have Dr. Corey Peacock. I have, Tony Ricci. These guys are probably, some of the most brilliant minds in the sport, and also in exercise physiology. So I can go to them at all times. There's a individual by the name of Carmen Bott who's really, really intelligent. She's a PhD in exercise phys, and she knows things on another level. But she's also a wrestling S&C coach out of Canada. So the great thing there is that I was able to do this because of the people that I work with, the sport that I'm in, and then I have that practical application. I can bridge that gap pretty well. Because again, I am deep into the science, but I also know practicality is important, and understanding the game and understanding the athlete is also very, very important too as well.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed. One of the first things I noticed when I was watching some of your videos was some of the advanced techniques that you use, especially regarding things like end range control, post-activation potentiation, lactate buffering, nasal breathing. The nasal breathing was one of the most interesting things, because that's stuff that I hear about, like in practice, and you hear about it in theory, but when you don't actually see people utilize that stuff, it's like things that you learn that you think are cool in courses, but to actually incorporate it, it takes quite a knowledge set, right? So when did you start using that nasal breathing and the breath hold techniques? Like, obviously for MMA fighters, that makes perfect sense just because of the amount of control they're probably going to have to utilize throughout the match and that too. So when did you start using that, and have you noticed big differences when you utilize it in training?
Yeah, I have, and the numbers really don't lie too as well. That's the one thing that I can say that we've seen a tremendous increase in, and in the ability to take in and utilize oxygen, and also, you know, what we call it, have the ability to cope with air hunger, right? So from a mental standpoint, it's really good for a fighter, especially when they're, you know, knee deep into a fight, you know, and they're low of air, be able to produce. They need to be able to defend and have acuity of what they're doing inside the cage or the ring. When I started doing it, I believe, you know, I got really deep into diaphragmatic breathing and understanding that to create intra-abdominal pressure. And I think the first person to really show me that was Dr. Stu McGill. And I was reading a couple of books on him. I think you know who Stuart McGill is.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah, back specialist out of Waterloo, and the reason why I got in with him is because I do have a powerlifting background too. So I was working a lot with Chris Duffin, who's a world record holder powerlifter, and he was telling me about it, and so I started reading more up on it and then doing some of the DNS techniques. And then going into that, I was like, okay, how can I enhance the ability to diaphragmatically breathe? Well, again, nasal breathing is going to be important. It helps with bringing in that oxygen in the right passage. And then also making sure that you're controlling the breathing is very important too as well. So I started doing that. And then I got into, I believe, I don't know who brought it up to me, but Oxygen Advantage. It's a Buteyko method. Patrick McCune has a book called Oxygen Advantage. I highly recommend that book to, I actually recommend it to all my coaches that I mentor, and then any assistant or any intern that works for me, they have to read the book. So I have the book, I read the book, and then I also have the audio book. So I've been knee deep into that. And then after that, I got introduced to Brian McKenzie, The Art of Breath. And then me and Brian actually had a conversation on my podcast, and Brian really goes in depth about different methods of breath work and how they can enhance not only recovery, but also performance and energy. And that's the main goal really, is to get these guys ready and capable of doing what they need to do inside the cage or the ring. You know,
so what are some common breath mistakes that you see? Like are people just holding their breath like innately? Because I used to do that when I played football. I'd hold my breath the entire play and I would be totally done.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with a lot of new guys that are starting out, you know, a lot of guys that don't like to get hit, you know, or they fear getting hit. They'll clench up and hold their breath. And obviously that's not optimal. I would say upper chest breathing and not having the ability to breathe diaphragmatically 360 degrees through the spine. I think that's one thing that we always are looking to enhance, especially getting into a training program. That's one of my prerequisites that they need to have. They need to have the ability to breathe like that, because that's going to set up the ability to create that intra-abdominal pressure that we need to get underneath heavy load so that we can get a strength adaptation. But again, it's also optimal breathing for recovery. It's optimal breathing for energy production. So yeah, that's one of the main things. We'll do things like crocodile breathing, and I'll use tactile cues and other things of that nature to help with that. You know, the one thing that I have seen that has helped is just a 90-90 position. Usually I'll have them palpate their obliques. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll go like underneath them and basically tell them to put pressure into my fingertips, or I can grab a strap. I got this from Chris, is Chris Duffin, is you can grab a strap or let's see, like a TheraBand or
TheraBand type thing.
TheraBand, yeah. And just pressurize, you know, create that pressure and then give them that tactile cue, pull that band and make sure that we can't pull that band away from their back, you know, so that does help too as well when you're trying to teach an individual how to breathe properly or breathe into the diaphragm.
Yeah, and that's like you said, DNS. I took a DNS course, one of the intro ones, and I noticed that one of the major concepts that they were going over was training people how to breathe 360. So breathing into the canister, not just. So when people start breathing, just typically they'll they'll bring their stomach out when they're trying to breathe, or they don't even know how to do it, right? They're chest breathers. They're trying to learn how to breathe diaphragmatically, and they'll just lift their stomach up. Sometimes when they're even breathing out because they're not sure. But the DNS course, we learn like 90-90. You start elevating the load. So even things like the crocodile breathing, which I assume is just breathing while prone and trying to, And then, I've even seen inventions where it's like a TheraBand that goes around you with two little like nuts in the back that go in your obliques, and you try to breathe into them. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to basically do the same thing, but definitely a major component in force production is creating that connection between the diaphragm and the pelvis with the breathing techniques like that.
Yeah.
So, and I also saw your use of FRC with PALS and RALs. FRC is a big coursework that's been utilized a lot in physical therapy lately. A lot of my friends took courses in it, and they've done very well with it. They like it. They love it. How did you learn about that? And I think is it Andrea Espn or something? I think that's his name, the guy who created it. How do you utilize that? What's your rationale for using this with your athletes?
I got introduced to that. And he recommended it to me as a means to, increasing the ability to create in-range control for all my athletes. And a lot of the times I was like, man, I'm really good. I can get a person strong. I can get their conditioning up. But when they come to me with those imbalances and dysfunctions, and I'm trying to create balance, and I'm trying to create the proper prerequisites to get underneath load, I'm like, there's certain things that you could do, but I know there's a better way. And the principles that they show you in FRC, it's higher level PNF almost, but I would say that utilizing isometrics and controlling the joints in all ranges is going to be very important, because then it allows you to disassociate from each joint, and you're working up the kinetic chain. So those CARs, the controlled articular rotations, those are very important just for awareness and flossing out the joint. And we'll do that every day. I'll try to get them to do that as a morning routine, and then what that basically is going to entail is they're going to work from the ankles, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, and neck. And what I'm trying to accomplish there is just awareness, right? Awareness, proprioception, kinesthetic awareness, and making sure that they can hold a position without compensation, right? And then from there, if I feel like they have a compensation pattern, well, then I'm going to put them in a position, and then I'm going to work on that progressive and regressive angular isometrics so I can enhance mechanoreceptors in that end range. And then I can also make sure that they're strong in that range so that I'll downregulate any type of nociception or anything of that nature. Especially for and this, with physical therapy, that's very important. Isometrics are a key concept in recovery process. So a lot of guys have tendonitis issues. They're beat up all the time. Their joints are aching. And so if we can get some type of isometric contraction in those ranges, that obviously we're not going to go through pain. But if we can subside that pain and downregulate nociception or the nociceptors there, I can get them to do movements that are going to enhance the performance of what they need, whether it be strength, power, speed, whatever. So that was the main thing, was like, how can I get them feeling better? Because if I can get them feeling better and moving better, well, then I can enhance all the other demands of the sport, Yeah,
because people will inherently, I mean, I see this with physical therapy, and I'm sure even with athletes, is that people inherently avoid positions and movements that they have memory of pain in, or they don't want to be painful in. So I'm sure this FRC, these movements expose some of those positions and pain. So you want to actually teach the brain to be okay with it again, because people will avoid them and they don't know why, and they just kind of live with it. So you have to explore those ranges of motion that they're avoiding, maybe without even realizing it, so they can actually conquer it and move on. And when you're an athlete performing something like an MMA fight against champions, you have to have everything at your helm. You can't not have a certain movement or a certain strength in a position not like immediately available. So I could see why that would be such an important thing to work on.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like, there's so much dysfunction in the sport because they're always in some type of fixed position. So well, again, athletes are master compensators to begin with. So whatever they can't do, they're going to work around it so that they can do it. So we got to almost eliminate that factor, not too much to where it's taken away from their game.
Yeah.
You ride that fine line of making sure that they're not going to get further injury from this, but we're not taking away from their strengths. And that's the one thing that you have to know. You have to know the sport. You have to know the athlete. You have to know the movements in that sport. So, that's where like, okay, we know that we need a little bit more hip dexterity. So we need more internal, external rotation, but we don't want to take away from their ability to create that force. Or let's say, you know, if they're going into their back and they don't have that optimal range of motion, well, that's going to be a key concept, because if I can get more range of motion, I can create more torque. So you're going to enhance the capabilities of the athlete, especially if they're a kickboxer.
Yeah.
You know, it plays into it if you know how to structure it.
Exactly. That's a valuable skill to know. And especially because people are constantly finding ways to get around things without realizing what they're doing. I see that all the time in PT. Is like, I mean, the extreme example is someone who needs a hip replacement. Like I have a patient right now who just leans all the way over, and that's a very obvious example. But with these guys, you really got to dig into it, because I mean, they're already doing a grappling sport, which I feel like those athletes, in my opinion, without even really working with them in the past, I would assume that they would actually be pretty good at multiple different positions, especially end ranges, which is another big thing you've talked about, end range control. I've seen this in your videos. And by the way, your YouTube's amazing. You have like 167,000 followers and your videos are nicely produced. So you found the right guy to make those videos for you. And obviously the content is what matters. It's great stuff. Because you go through all the rationale of, you go through the things you're talking about now, which obviously you're extremely informed. You know, I've watched a few videos, but right now you're proving to me like this is incredible. You know a lot more than a lot of you know,
I appreciate
educated people out there. So
thank you.
That's why I'll say that much. So explain to me like the end range control component is just, it's a concept that we were just talking about a minute ago with like the FRC and the PALs and RALs, and looking for these extra ranges of motion where people could be maybe weaker or less efficient. Is this because, I assume this would be huge in MMA, because you're locked up in positions you don't even know what they're going to be. So they have to be proficient at creating force and strength and torque from multiple angles, from multiple joints at the same time. So what are some ways that you work on end range control with your athletes in general?
Yeah, like, again, those PALs and rails are important. You know, if you look at it, like let's say for instance, a grappler, a wrestler, right? They get extended in a position and they're trying to hold on to a single or a double leg, and they get extended off of a sprawl, right? If they don't have adequate shoulder flexion, then something down the line with that tension, they're going to cause an injury. So we want to have them have the ability to have that flexibility to get in the range, but be strong in that end range.
Exactly.
That's going to allow them to have better overall capabilities inside the fight, especially with like jujitsu and things of that nature, because they're getting contorted and moved around and stacked in different positions. So we want to put them in those positions. First, we need to gain the range of motion. So again, we need to make sure that they have adequate flexibility, right? So flexibility being, you know, passive range of motion in a sense, right? But if I can get them now to
base
increase level. Base level. And what I do feel is mobility is the next level to that, because you're going to gain that active end range control. You're going to have that ability to be strong in those end ranges. And that's really where you can cause a difference. So like I said, if you're in total shoulder flexion, but then the guy's whole body is down on your shoulders in that flexion, well, you need to be strong and in those ranges. So how do you control that? How do you get that stronger? Well, you do maximal isometric contractions, and you can rev up from 50% to 100%. And that's what we call those progressive and regressive angular isometric. So you're working the agonist and the antagonistic muscle to allow for that range of motion to occur. And I've seen tremendous increases in mobility in general. But again, it's a training method. You have to keep training it. It's not like a one day fits, one time, fixes everything, right?
Exactly. Like most things.
Yeah. But if you consistently train, obviously you're going to catch the adaptation and then you'll have that better range of motion. But the goal, again, like I said, is to let's gain flexibility, let's get that range of motion, and then let's get that strong in that end range. So that's really what, we try to accomplish. And then you can put external load to that. So now instead of just doing PALs and rails, now you do things like iso movement preps. And where basically what you're trying to do there is you're trying to isolate the body or create irradiation so you can stack and make sure nothing else moves in compensation. And then you work in ranges that are the weakest position. So let's say, for instance, you go into, let's go shoulder flexion and abduction, right? And there's your weakest position. Well, if that's your weakest position and I start to see compensation through elbow bend and rotation, or let's say lateral flexion, then what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bias out the body. I'm going to make sure that you're stabilized, maybe put you in a prone position. and then I'll put something on your wrist, maybe like an ankle weight, or in this case, it would be a wrist weight. And then you would do rotations or end range movements in that range. So it's a quasi isometric. So now I'm strengthening up the muscles that allow that movement to occur without compensation to happen. And it's a training effect if you do it. Again, same thing, like, building your biceps, you got to do 3 sets of 10 and you got to progressively overload. And that's how we usually accomplish that.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost you for a second on the podcast, on the top thing here. I'm trying to add you. Yeah. I'm trying to re-add you. I don't know if that was me or you.
Nah, I just shut off, I think.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get that going again. I'd hate for people not to. We got all of your friends waiting in here. Let me see. Okay. If it doesn't work, I'll just post this on. So you got to have backups always.
Got you. I just sent the request.
Cool. Add. Awesome. Should work. And we're back. There we go. Good. What's that from? It's from something I remember. Okay, so a couple more things. We mentioned a little bit about the post-activation potentiation. The rationale that I'm used to using this is when you want to obviously potentiate movement for people. So you want to get them ready to do something more. So you activate it by doing like an explosive thing into a immovable object. So it
would almost be, that's pre-activation potentiation, actually. That's something that we've been messing around with. But with the post-activation, what you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to, activate motor units and muscle fibers to allow for faster explosive movements to occur. So for me, getting closer to a fight per se, if I can still maximize force, maximal force. And what is maximal force? That's without velocity. So that's zero velocity. That's maximal force. When you look at force velocity curves. So I'm going to have to do a maximal isometric contraction. And I like to do that in a concentric contraction mode or an overcoming isometric. So what that is I'll maybe pull into a pin where I'm pulling as hard as I can for 2 to 3 seconds. And then I'll let it down, do it again, 2 or 3 seconds, let it down, do it again, maybe 2 to 3 reps. Right? We're activating those mechanoreceptors in the posterior chain. And then you do a similar movement pattern that's going to still simulate what you're doing. Like, let's say, for instance, a mid-thigh pull into a box jump or just a vertical jump in general, right? Or you could do a unloaded trap bar jump. Anything that's going to put that body in the right position. So you're working on the accentuation phase. We're working on the direct positioning that is going to directly correlate over to the sport. Whether that be a Zercher squat position, right? You got double underhooks.
Yeah.
Whether it be a glute bridge floor press, which again, that's going to be like a bridge and roll where you're actually trying to get somebody off of you if you're mounted. Things of that nature. Now you can do all these different movements, especially when you're getting closer to the fight, because specificity is key if you look at it from a periodization standpoint. But again, we're trying to minimize the risk of injury. So if I can minimize the risk of injury, I can still work maximal force without having to load their body with maximal weight. They can just produce force with their own body weight into an immovable object. And that's how you can work on what they dub the phenomenon of post-activation potentiation. Basically, it's a contrast set. You're taking one thing and you're enhancing it to produce more power in the other.
Yeah, and that's another thing is the contrast set. So that's almost one and the same. In your use of it, you make it one and the same often.
So with post-activation, what they say is you need a longer rest period to recover, right? You need to recover your ATP, right? But here's the thing. You don't have that time, especially like if you were doing this outside of camp and you were just trying to get maximal power production, then I can see that happen. Like definitely take your time on it, right? You want to wait. Sometimes they even say up to like 3 to 5 minutes at some ways. Now this is if you're doing, let's say for instance, it really depends on the athlete too. It depends on how strong the athlete is. Right. For me, when I was powerlifting, I could squat well over 600 pounds. So if I were to do a maximal contraction on Leo, stop. My son's playing with his toy. Sorry, man.
I saw him grabbing one earlier on the right side of you.
He's going after it right now.
I thought maybe that was your toy dinosaur.
And my blocks and everything else.
It's 2020. I don't question anything.
yeah. Everybody has their own thing nowadays, huh? But where was I? So what was I talking about? Shit.
You're talking about the contrast sets and
Okay,
post-exercise.
yeah.
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 And the
So
minute rest, it's not
if
functional.
I'm gonna do a 620-pound squat, I'm probably
Mm-hmm.
gonna need to get my bearings back, right? I'm gonna need, at least maybe 2 minutes so I can
Mm-hmm.
do a maximal power production. Let's say a 30, or let's not even 30. Let's go 42-inch box jump or something like that. And I'm gonna need some time to rest. These individuals they're not as maximally strong because they're not power lifters, not weightlifters, they're fighters. You need them to have you need to have relative strength, right? And the way you can do that is, again, taking something that is going to be very safe for them to do, whether it be an Anderson squat, whether it be an isometric, something like that. What we call is, it's basically the Hoffman method, where you take a moving, let's say for instance, I set up a position where I feel I'm weakest at,
Yes.
and I'll go into an isometric contraction into that, because you have 15 degrees of strength that you can increase in that range. So up or down. So again, if I'm going mid thigh, well, I'm working the entire deadlift at that point.
Yeah, and this is something you see in, like, I think West Side technique, right? Doesn't West Side have like the partials where they'll pull up into a bar in the squat rack with a deadlift. They'll hold it. Or even things like pause squats. That would be almost a similar concept neurologically, right? They're holding a position at the part that they're weakest at the bottom to overcome that.
Well, that would be, and you have like pause squats, you have things of that nature to help you with sticking points, right? There's what Louis will call mini maxes. So for me, I like to do those eccentrics, the eccentric isometrics, which basically is a yielding isometric. There's two ways to call it. I like to do that actually outside of camp. So if I were to run, let's say, for instance, are you familiar with triphasic training?
Yes, not too familiar.
I mean, to put it in basic terms, all it is
layman.
it's two, but it's layman. You know what I'm talking
about. For the listeners.
Yeah. So 2 weeks, it's a 2-week mesocycle of eccentrics, isometrics, and then concentrics.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the goal is to just enhance movement quality, increase the capacity to withstand load, increase force production, things of that nature. So I will do that outside of camp to get the body prepped and ready for higher levels of maximal force production. And what I use inside of camp is a condensed version of conjugate. So we're going to be doing max effort lifts if they have the ability to do so. They have to have the coordination, things of that nature. But if they don't, then I back them off. We'll do 3-5 rep sets, and we'll get the strength endurance from that. Now, and a lot of people, let me reiterate strength endurance. Strength endurance is not muscular endurance. There's a difference, right? Muscular endurance is working the muscle and working on the endurance of being able to increase the energy output of slow and fast twitch fibers. Now, strength endurance, however, is more of that on that range of strength speed. So you're looking to enhance strength for a longer duration, maximal strength for a longer duration.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So
yeah,
if
it's
you
easily
work,
confused.
Yeah, if you were to work like a hybrid method and you wanted to get some strength and hypertrophy, you would want to stick in those 5 rep ranges. So that's why a program like 5x5 has always been really good for beginners.
Yeah, it's a classic.
You're going to build, you're going to go bigger, stronger, faster at that point. So that's why they started it. And that's why, starting strength usually that popularized 5x5 training, because it's just going to get you the biggest bang for your buck if you're a beginner lifter. So, and it's the same goes for somebody that's a combat sport athlete that's never lifted a weight in a day in their life, or never been in the weight room, maybe strong because they've been grappling forever. But just lifting weights, they're not efficient in it yet. So I'm not gonna maximally load an individual that doesn't have the coordination to get underneath that load. I'm gonna teach them the movement patterns, increase their coordination inter and intramuscularly, and then go from there. And that can be done. And ideally you want that done outside of camp, but it's not a perfect world, right? So some guys come to me at 6 weeks out, and they've never lifted a weight in a day in their life, but they want me to help them. So the only cutoff I have is 4 weeks out, because I can't really do much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you selective? And I mean, I'm sure you're selective with your athletes, because you don't want to have someone come in on you that is unprepared with no time, and they want to have you be like their savior.
Yeah, it's tough because and then now at this point, everybody's on the line, so every coach has a responsibility.
Yeah.
And if something happens in the fight where they don't have the conditioning, or they're not producing power, or they're getting outstrengthed, or they're getting tossed around like a rag doll, but they seen you as their strength and conditioning coach, well, they're automatically gonna point the blame to you. for that, for that happening. You only had 4 weeks and maybe 2 days a week, if that, with them, going into the fight. So I'm very meticulous on, who I take on now and what I do. Because when I was over at American Top Team, I used to have to train everyone because I was a part of the coaching staff, and that was very tough for me. But we had the opportunity to do it. I wouldn't say it was that optimal. The great thing about that was that at ATT you have a lot of guys that are just iron sharpens iron, so they were getting really good there. But when I had guys that started with me 8, 10, 12 weeks out, then I was excited because I know that we have a great progression.
Yeah, you can actually make something happen.
Yeah, and can peak them accordingly. But yeah, I never really like taking people on less than 4 weeks out.
So your facility itself has it's the Daru Strong. That's the name of the facility. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Daru Strong. Daru Strong. And this is located in, once again, West Palm Beach?
Boca Raton.
Boca Raton, sorry. It's still South Florida, so it counts for the podcast.
It's right
yeah, right. So there's a big contingent of MMA fighters in that area, or do they come in for those time periods? Because I know that you've trained with some legit people, Colby Covington, I think Tecia, Torres, King Mo, Lawal, all these people, NFL athletes as well, celebrities.
Yeah, I've worked my major guys that I've worked with, that's been with me for a long time, multiple camps. We're talking 8, 9 camps. Is Dustin Poirier, Ioane, and Jacek. Those are two that stayed with me for a very long time. So 4 years that I was at ATT, they stuck with me the whole time. So those are the most consistent, and I obviously I'm most proud of their accomplishments there. But I got some new guys that come in now that are in the UFC that I'm pretty happy about. I got a brand new guy, in different camps too, not American Top Team, camps around the area. And so watching these guys, and again, it's better now that I have the ability to kind of structure it a little bit more efficiently for me and get the guys in the right groups that I need to, because I have more time. And I have more coaches too. So I have assistants, I have interns that come in, and I have a director of performance that helps me out when I'm down. I have an ACL tear. I'm still in the gym. I'm still coaching. It was my first day back full time yesterday. But they took the reins when I had the surgery and I was out for like a week. So, but yeah, it is good. I got a guy that's fighting this weekend, Randy Costa, really good up and comer. And then, we just had a guy win last week on the Contender who just got a contract for the UFC.
Oh, nice.
Phil Hulse. He had a major knockout, which was, I was happy for him, man. Cause it was one of those last dying efforts to get his contract. So it was important.
When you watch these fights, do you see some concepts that you've trained with people like playing out? Like, oh my God, I'm glad we worked on that because he needed that in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. Hold on one second.
That's okay.
Leo, go get your sisters and tell them to pay for the. Okay. He put himself in a box, so now he gotta climb out of the box. You get his sisters. You got it.
This is you. Yeah. This is you exerting maximal restraint because you're being. Yeah.
Exactly.
Most people would. I mean, yeah, you got your recorder from two ends. My dad would get the belt and he snaps it against itself.
Oh, he gets reprimanded. Don't worry. I'll make sure of that.
He's just putting himself in a box. It's almost worse when you're calm, right? It's
I'm very. My wife says I need to show more emotion. I'm actually very even keeled. Like I'm very stoic in that way. I think
that's the way to do it. Yeah, Tony Dungy style.
Yeah, I've always been like that. Ever since I was a kid. I think a lot of it, and then it got heightened when I started fighting because I was like, I have to control my emotions at all times, So, and I feel like being a leader and being a captain in whatever you do, you have to have that ability to stay even, just in the face of adversity and in the face of victory and triumph. So,
I mean, you see that a lot with fighters. Like, I don't know if this is true or not. You know better than me, but if you have a group of MMA fighters, very highly trained combat people that could like kill you, they don't often lose control of their emotions and like casually fight each other. Because I don't know if that's true or false, but I think that when people aren't trained and when people are nervous and like you're at a bar, they want to fight because they don't know how to respond, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started really training, a lot of that stuff went away. Like, because again, a lot of people, they don't have the confidence to walk around. A lot of guys like to chest out. They gotta work day in and day out in the gym to pump up their muscles or do push-ups before they go out. I've done that before when I was in high school. But like when I started fighting, like I didn't even
I still
care.
did that.
Yeah, there's like at least 15 people that are listening. They're like, damn, I do that too.
Got me.
Yeah, but I think Jordan Peterson says this, and I've been listening to a lot of his stuff recently. But saying, and he was on Jocko Willing's podcast talking about dangerous people make the best individuals, right? So I believe that it does take a person that is very confident in their abilities physically and mentally, that allows them to kind of let their guard, or not let their guard down, but let their hair down and just be relaxed at all times, because they know they can handle business if the time comes to do so. And that's a comforting thing, not for the individual, not just for the individual, but for the people that they surround themselves with.
Yeah, and Jordan Peterson, I'm on a first name basis with him. Jordan Peterson always talks about like, he talks a lot about the people that tend to be more violent, and he always says, clean your room. And people are like, what do you mean by clean your room? Yeah. But I think what he's talking about is like, a lot of people are disorganized and disheveled in their life, and they want to go out and fight for something that's so big, but they don't even have their stuff down. And I think that exhibits itself when they get into when they get feisty, they get into fights and stuff, and all these things that happen when you don't have yourself under control. There's like an inner peace that you develop that I think fighters definitely would have, especially with all that. It takes a lot of I forgot the word I'm looking for, but they got to be in control of their emotions, essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
Discipline.
You can't be a hypocrite. You got to do it when nobody's looking too, as well. You can't talk about it. You got to be about it. I think that's one thing that a lot of people, they like to be the, what they call it, the guy on the mound, the preacher on the mound. And at the end of the day, it's like, all right, well, what are you doing to contribute? Like a lot of these guys that are motivational speakers, I'm like, well, that's great. Like, you're motivating, but like, what did you actually do besides just be a great motivational speaker? You know what I mean? And that may be something that people look at like, oh, he's successful as a motivational speaker. That's dope. But I like the guys that actually done something and increased their abilities from whatever avenue they went and did. Yeah. I want to see success there first, and then they can tell me about how to be successful. You know what I mean? So that's why when people are like, you should write a book, or you should talk about these things on, like, I'll talk about things that I've been through to help motivate people, because I've actually done it and I feel comfortable doing that. I don't feel like I'm faking it. I'm 100% authentic, and I'm transparent in everything that I say, because I'm going to show you that I'm going through it. And then I'm going to show you how well I can get over this situation or triumph over any type of a hurdle that, may come about. And what that will do is that'll let people into my life and understand that he's actually doing what he's saying he's doing, or he's doing what he's telling other people to do, as opposed to just being like, you should do this. And like, you're like, bro, I haven't seen you do anything. Like, you just, so not to put any other motive, like I like Eric Thomas. I think he's good. I Les Brown, those guys are awesome. But I'm just like, man, who really I like Gary Vaynerchuk. I think he shows that what he does, he's been successful, he's been there, or he's done it, and then he's motivating people through his actions, which is very important. And obviously he has a mouthpiece too. He can talk his fucking ear off, but
oh my God.
But at the end of the day, like, you can't deny the fact that the guy has been successful with the businesses that he's had or had.
Wine, right? I think it's like wine sales.
Yeah, wine and media, but it could be anything, man. You could be selling, I don't give a fuck, like, whatever. It's just Pokemon cards. Widgets, you can do that and be awesome, you know what I'm saying? But as long as you are the best at that, I respect that. Or as long as you're fully focused on that and that's what your passion is and you're doing really well in it, 100%, you're the man, or the woman.
To be successful at selling success is interesting. Like people that don't have actual gigs, that their whole success came off of selling the dream, and they didn't actually succeed in something on their own first because of that. Like you can't rag them, because like Eric Thomas, for example, like he's very motivational and that's his thing. but still, it's like you like to see someone succeed in their own, learn, go through the trials and tribulations, be able to relate, and then they can motivate from a more realistic standpoint, I think. So that's always good when someone can actually relate to that stuff. So you mentioned earlier about your ACL. I saw, and this is how I found out about you. I probably saw your stuff before, but I follow Dr. David Abbasi. I met with him, and he's a cool guy, and he was talking about your ACL. And then I watched the YouTube video that you made about it, and it's actually really informative. Like, if I ever have a patient that wants to know what they're about to experience when they get an ACL tear and they go to the orthopedic surgeon, that video is perfect because it goes through the process.
Yeah.
So,
man, it was I put my body on the line for that one, man. I'll tell you that. I just requested you back for the IG too as well.
I saw that. You left for a minute. Someone called me. I had to end it. I can't believe iPhone didn't value our conversation over that phone call. All right, cool. Yeah, so talk about your ACL. Let me hear about that.
Well, I mean, this has been a year in the making, man. I tore it in jiu-jitsu about almost a year, December 2nd, I believe, of 2019. So I got my first MRI December 31st. It was a full ACL rupture. And then I was on it for, the past, 6-8 months, something like that, or 6 months. Yeah, right around 6 months, something like that. And I was like, man, I need to get this done. But then COVID happened, and then they stopped the
elective procedures.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, fuck, man, I'm just gonna get strong, and just build it up. But I've been, I guess, prehabbing for my entire life, because I've been
with the focus on what you're talking about, you basically are prehabbing your whole life.
Yeah. And the reason why a lot of people think like, oh, I did it squatting, or I did it, changing direction, or something. No, it was trauma. Like, I literally got caught into a position, and I went to pass my training partner's guard, and because I was in the gi, there's a lot of friction. So usually I'm used to being able to peek out, turn my hip, and just push the leg down and get out. And that's really good. You can do that in no gi because you're very slippery, sweat and things like that, and there's no friction there, right? So, but I forgot, gi. So he had my gi pant, and he locked the De La Riva guard, which is basically he locked his leg around my leg.
Yeah.
And from there, my foot was caught in external torque or external rotation. And then he sat on my foot. So I was stuck in that position, and then didn't really realize it because it was fast. So I pushed his leg down just enough to clear the knee. And that was my ability to try to get out. But my knee totally rotated to the opposite way where my foot was, with my force, my rotational force going.
You were adding, you were trying to do something to him, and you basically just tore your ACL from the tibia and wow.
Complete rupture. And then, so I was training on it and coaching on it, for a while. And so David went in, and he was doing his thing. He was like, man, and I was going to get another MRI, but I was like, you know what, man, I'm like, you're going to go in there, you're going to find it anyways. So go ahead. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point, and he did find that I had a slight tear in the meniscus, which he just sewed back up. But yeah, that was it. But the whole time, like the procedure, 2 hours maybe at the most, but the procedure lasted well over 3-4 hours, I believe, because he shot everything in detail. So I was out on the table from 8 to 2 p.m.
What's the full work day?
Full work day.
I
was in full coma mode. I was out. I was fucking out. And when I woke up, they go, how you feeling? And I'm like, they're like, what's your pain? And I'm like, what level? And I'm like, it's like an 8, it does hurt. And they're like, they hit me with Demerol. So I'm like, then I couldn't see. And I'm like, you know what? And they asked me again. I'm like, I'm good. I can't see anything. I'm fine. Just no more.
Pain is
I don't want anything
secondary.
else. Yeah. Then my wife caught me, and I'm sitting in the wheelchair, and I'm dozed off. And then I know, how you could feel somebody looking at you and putting a phone in your face. I knew she was doing it, even though I was very high on life at this point. Didn't know where I was to a degree. I knew she was doing it, so I gave him a little something there. And
yeah, she wanted to get you saying some dumb stuff like those Facebook videos, right?
Never.
Yeah, not even
Never
no
catch
state.
me.
There's no state to get you like that.
Can't catch me slipping, man. I'm ready to go.
Through and through, right?
Yep.
She was trying to get you. So you got the surgery, and that was how long ago? That was recent.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So now you're back in rehab. You're going to physical therapy.
Yeah, I mean, I got Dr. Christiana Marin. I've known her for a while. She's originally from New York. She's worked with a lot of my fighters. She's worked with some NFL guys, and she knows me. She knows my body. She knows how much I train. She knows my capability. She knows my knowledge level. And David and her are a really good mix and match, I should say, because David knows me from the MMA world. She knows me from the strength training world and the MMA world. And they both know that my capabilities and my knowledge base. So like, it's not a whole lot that they have to really overlook. A lot of times, again, it's just like any other athlete. They got to pull me back at times. I'm always trying to do some type of shit to get better. And, you know, I'll go see her once a week and she'll do more soft tissue work and lymph drainage and things of that nature, just to kind of get blood flowing. But the actual work itself is me, you know, every day doing something, whether it be quad sets or, you know, doing some EMS stuff and range of motion, you know, control articular rotations even. I'll do ankle and hip. And right now I'm just focusing on gaining that flexion because my extension is phenomenal.
Which is good. That's the first thing you want.
That's what I heard, and that's why I was killing the quad sets. Since like, soon as I was in the bed doing them.
Right. Quad sets all day.
The one thing that I am really, really upset about, and it may be you know, somewhat of a vanity issue for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I already know.
My quad is gone right now.
Oh man,
non-existent. And I have big quads. I have big hamstrings and quads. So now I look totally unproportionate, and it's like one big side on the left. Yeah,
and this is within 2 weeks, because before the surgery you were maintaining, right? You were prehabbing all day.
Yeah,
isn't it crazy how small it gets in 2 weeks?
I didn't think that I was gonna do that. I didn't think it was. Honestly, I didn't think it was gonna drastically. Like my VMO is non-existent right now. Like it's gone.
Yeah, it's disgusting, right?
But
sausage legs. You should shave your leg, get a tan, and take that picture girls take. You would no different. Be hot dogs.
I'm like, man, this looks like my leg when I was like 13, man. What the hell? But I am getting more. I'm getting more definition now on vastus lateralis. You can definitely see rectus femoris start to peek in. VMO is gonna take a minute, but you know, I'm happy. My hamstring didn't go that much, so that's good, because like I'm all hamstrings. If you really look at any of my videos or something, like pictures, and people know, it's like I pride myself on my hamstrings. You know, my hamstrings and my glutes. That's what happens when you play football, like, you know, in box squat all your life. You know, hamstrings and glutes and hips. So.
You know, someone knows what they're doing when the non-mirror muscles are big, right? Their back, their hamstrings, their glutes, their Christmas trees in there.
That's what I told one of my high school football players. I was like, man, you know how you can tell somebody's really a strong motherfucker? It's not the pecs, not the biceps. It's they have big ass upper back and they have big glutes. And he's like glutes. I'm like, glutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I hate to do it, but like when I'm working with patients, a lot of the times they need glute work, no matter how strong they are. They just need like reactivation. They need to focus on these muscles because they seem to be the driver of a lot of their issues. And it's like, I hate to be that guy that has like a go-to, but I'm like, man, like another glute problem here. Let's work on that. So it always ends up coming back to that anyway, even if you're very strong and you're recently injured yourself. So it always seems to come full circle with that.
I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I also think that a large amount of people have that kyphotic posture, anterior pelvic tilt. So it kind of shortens the ability or lessens the ability to contract the glutes efficiently. Or a lot of guys just have SI issues and they're out of place. You know, if we can correct the SI and maybe get it back in order, they have the ability to do that. I think at the end of the day, if you have a big butt, I know we're talking about butts here, but you can't contract it, then that's what I'm saying, man. But if you can't contract it, then there's definitely a structural issue that needs to be addressed. So, you know, go see your local physical therapist, maybe a chiropractor, whatever. How do you feel about chiropractors, by the way?
Oh, that's always a big debate.
Yeah.
So the thing with so a lot of the times people, I have a lot of chiropractor friends. I have one or two. which is a lot for a PT. And there's always like this little debate, but a lot of most chiropractors I know and I run across they follow like the same rules and concepts I do. And I'd say the same proportion of PTs and chiropractors talk bullshit. Like, but we just look at it like from a PT's perspective, we think that all chiros are these people that are like cracking necks when they have disc herniations right away, or they're just all about cracking the back.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, there's differences and there's positives to each. It's just that, you know, I obviously tend to look at the more, I think that just being a physical therapist and being around people like PTs growing up in school, we look at chiros sometimes as like, oh my gosh, like they're just going to adjust them and say that their back's out of alignment, which sometimes can exacerbate the issue. Cause a lot of times it's out of alignment reasoning, which I've heard from PTs too, but chiropractors get the brunt of that. It's a false narrative, because if your spine was really out of alignment, that would be a major problem. But what they're doing is they're getting cavitations while they put you in a position. They're cracking your back, but it's not like you're putting a vertebrae into place, but it can make things feel better, and it can lead to positive change, especially with nociceptive awareness. It doesn't hurt as much. It makes the patient feel the area that hurts. Maybe they haven't moved it much because they're sitting all day.
True, but I feel like that could be a cause for a disaster too. Because if you tell me if I feel good, I'm gonna go 100%, right, 120%. But if structurally I really don't have that capability to do that, but I feel good, well then I'm probably gonna cause further damage. So it's like a give or take. But I feel what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like it's really about the self-efficacy of the patient. Does the patient feel as if they can do something? Because a lot of the times if they have back pain and someone told them that, well, your pain is because you're out of alignment, that might not be the root cause of it, but that's honestly like more than 50% of all treatments, physio or chiro. So you just want to work on the symptoms, get them feeling in a way that makes them good enough to continue and go back to these activities they were doing before. And if they run across problems, a lot of the times I'm a big fan of like having people go for it. If I know they're structurally fine, like you probably go at a whole nother level. I mean, you're like a power lifter, you're a fighter, you're doing all these things. So it's like you, as long as a PT or, you're wise enough yourself to know, you seem like you are, although you probably go pretty hard, you probably sometimes just go really hard when you maybe know you shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. That's what I'm talking about with Christiana. She knows that I know my body very well. Yeah. So it's like, all right, I know how to, like, even when I'm doing the squats now, like I'm going to 30 degrees, but like I know where to place my body. I know where to create torque, and I can cheat a little bit more so than a regular person, because I know
you feel that you can.
Yeah.
And then if she knew that she knows you well enough to know that you're probably going to think like that, because there are stages in the ACL recovery where you don't want to actually endanger the graft, because you could feel one way, but your stupid foreign ACL, it was a patellar graft, patellar tendon. Yeah. And like there is some foreign materials in there that even though you know what's going on, like they can have their own mind, because there's metal.
That's one thing that I am worried about, because I can't dictate. I don't know that. Per se. And I never had an ACL tear, so I can't. I mean, I've had people that I know had it, and maybe one or two of my athletes have had it in the past from trauma, but I don't know what they felt like. I could ask them, but it's hard for me to understand it unless I truly feel it. This is why I feel it's going to be very important for me to understand it and really get to know the details, because it's going to make me a better coach. And I believe that if you go through certain things, I know a lot of guys that aren't PTs, that aren't chiros, that aren't even, have a background in exercise science, but they've had like 7 ACL injuries and they know exactly what the hell to do, because they've been through it so many times. A guy named King Mo Lawal. He's
I read him on your website. I looked into him.
So Mo had I think he's had like 7 surgeries on his knees, and he's had ACL tears. He's even had what has he had? He had not staph, but
oh my god, like a super virus, a super infection.
Yeah.
And
MRSA inside of his knee after the surgery. God. So it's like
just eats away.
So anything, I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna take your advice almost as much as, I don't want to say as much as somebody that really does it, but it's like he's right there, man, because he's learned a lot.
He's been through it so much. I mean, you need those patient testimonials. You need to find out what it's like for them, because you can throw protocols all day. And protocols are good because they've been studied and they're based on rehab and actual healing times of foreign tissues in your body and how not to re-tear something when you just tore it and you got it fixed. But like in the end, it's like realistically, you have to look at the patient's response. So it seems like you really have one side of it down, but we got to look at the whole picture. And yeah, he probably has a great perspective because he's been injured so much. So he's probably a good guy to talk to at this point.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Nah, it's good to see, and that's why I'm excited. But when I had this issue when it first started, and obviously it was like shit, it sucks. But at the same time, I'm in a growth mindset, so I'm more about solution minded as opposed to that problem thinking. I really want to look at it from that perspective of, okay, how can I progress from this and learn from this particular circumstance, and we're doing that now, and I'm asking questions on a daily basis on top of the fact that I'm actually living it and going through it myself. So I'm happy with that,
You're going to come out wiser and smarter about all of this stuff in the end anyway. Oh, the video just ended on its own, which is fine. We could just end the video. Let me share this. We'll share it to IGTV. We'll figure that out later. But this part we'll just put on the regular podcast. Yeah, so before we leave, we went over a lot of cool stuff today. Can you tell us a little bit about your gym and like the concepts behind it? Because we've gone over a lot of the rationale, and I think a lot of the listeners might not even know exactly what MMA camp is and what your gym and how your gym works with that. Because I know I've heard of we're preparing. I worked at an NFL combine where we prepare guys for NFL combines. We can prepare them for the draft. Is this kind of like what you're doing? Because with MMA athletes, they have competitions all throughout the year.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more concurrent. There's a lot of guys that fight multiple times throughout the years. Some of them don't know when they're fighting, so it's really like you have to have the systems in place, and that's what it is. And I not only do I work with, I specialize in combat sports, but we also work with youth athletes, baseball, football, soccer, and also we have just a fitness group that we work with as a boot camp that we have there too as well. But the main majority of the people that I work with are going to be fighters. But what's up? I'm almost done. Okay, you getting a ride? Okay, I'll get out. No, that's fine. I got you. All right. So I got 2 minutes. I got to take my dog.
I got you.
Soccer. But yeah, so basically that's what we do. And what I'll do is I'll get the guys in that have fights coming up. We'll set up an assessment consultation, do a full hour, maybe an hour and a half. And go through all the assessments, and I'll go through a physiological assessment, mental assessment. I'll go through a movement assessment, and then they'll either, we'll look at strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll try to find those focus points that we need to in and out of camp. And so, again, it's subjective, but again, we also want to make sure that we have a skeleton system in order for us to plug and paste when need to, because again, it's so hard to put together a structured personal plan for 20 to 30 athletes that all have different times. But if you have a good system, if you have a good methodology behind what you're doing, then you can auto regulate on anything, and then you can make whatever exercise, whatever modality of training, you can make it subjective to the individual as long as the methods remain the same. And that's primarily what we do, and why we've been so successful is because I've been able to take as many methods of training that can mesh together and work well, and that are integrated together from an energy demand standpoint, and also from a mechanical standpoint, biomechanics standpoint, that are going to enhance the qualities of a fighter and enhance the qualities of an athlete in general. So, that's the main concept. And I also have a mentorship program that I have over 300 coaches right now from around the world that are learning the methods, learning the protocols that I actually use with my fighters. And it basically is a portal where we share information, and they have all of my stuff from, my programs to, all of my articles, to all of my YouTube clips, to all of my seminars, things of that nature. And you get access to that for forever. However long you want to listen to me talk. It's a one-time fee. So I'm more proud about that, honestly, because I'm developing a community of coaches that are actually communicating with each other and helping each other get better, along with the stuff that I can give them with the experiences that I've gained over the years. So very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing the amount that man. Yeah, I'd say that more about some of this habilitative techniques and and physiology stuff than many of my colleagues, including me, with a lot of these specific things. So it's very impressive. Phil Daru.
Yeah, Daru, same thing.
Daru.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that name from?
It's French, but my
Daru.
family moved to Italy, so it's like my great grandfather was the general of Napoleon army.
Oh my God.
French, yeah. If you look at
that's kind of a good bloodline, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't have a Napoleon complex though. Are you tall?
Nah, I'm not tall, but I'm not short either.
Exactly what someone Napoleon complex would say.
I mean, people meet me and they're like, "Man, you're a lot shorter than I thought," and I'm like, "Man, fuck you, man." Like,
yeah. What do I have to do? Yeah, the thing about height, you can't change it. You get as big as you want. You can't change height.
I mean, I'm 5.
Your voice is deep. That's what does it, man.
That's it. I got a big man's voice. 5'8". I'm 5'8". And
yeah, I'm about that height.
205. That's it. You know.
There you go.
Yeah.
You look lean. There you go. Keep it up, man. Well, take your daughter to soccer. I won't keep you anymore. But Phil Daru, check him out. Look at his Instagram. I'll put all the notes and everything you mentioned below. We need more people like you, more coaches that are well-studied and extremely well-versed in a lot of these subjects that you're talking about, including, it sounds like, Jordan Peterson type stuff, which gets me interested in, obviously. Once you start falling into that, like Joe Rogan, you look into Jordan Peterson, it's like there's like this similar like YouTube drain that we all kind of look into. So so nice talking to you, man, and I look forward to talking to you in the future, and have a good day. Okay,
thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Adios.
All right.